The reason why we generally don't prefer diversity, and we should just acknowledge this, is because we as an organism and as a species are programmed for sameness. So the tribe just works better when we're all the same, but it causes us to think very similar. As you bring in people who are different fields, different perspectives, try it out, go to a conference with people who are not in your field, arguments happen, and dissent happens, and disagreement happens, and all of a sudden you start using a whole lot of ATP and energy, and your blood pressure goes up, and all kinds of stuff happens because of the dissent, right? And so I tell people up front, my lab is a conflict engine. It is built to create conflict. And so we're gonna have to talk about what that's like for people who have never experienced conflict.
I think oftentimes when we see people who are really successful, which this panel is, we forget that it's made up of lots of multiple steps forward and backward, and that we all have failures oftentimes that we have to get over. And I think it's really healthy to remind everyone about that.
You are always going to have a failure. It's really how you interpret that. And I always put on a panel in the summer for undergraduates called Failure is the New Success. Because anyone that you've met that has a Ph.D., an M.D., a president, they all have a failure story. I mean, I never intended to even be in academia, like ever. And so my friends started listening and they're like, well, there is this postdoc with this black woman that, I mean, it's a genetics, you may be able to do it. I became her very first postdoc, and she transformed the way I thought about academia. And I stayed in academia because of her. So I feel like that failure was necessary in order to be successful.
I work with startups, and I always tell them, always be willing to challenge your assumptions, right? Know that you're in these brief cycles that you can challenge the assumptions and make these failures quickly so you can learn from them fast. That, I think, is where it's very important, right? Whether it's in your personal life or in your professional life, that you are thinking about where your assumptions are coming from, right? On how you interact and do things. And to constantly remind yourself that, okay, it's not always the right way. I have to go back and maybe back to the drawing board and think about the approach.
It's about finding your passion, finding your purpose, finding a way, if you can, to have your passion meet your purpose. The thing that I was talking to some of my colleagues about yesterday is this feeling of, someone mentioned earlier, black tax, where you feel like you have to be that much better, you have to be that much more educated, you have to be that much more, be the best that you can, but also be authentic to who you are. You know, don't feel like you have to show up in a space and be someone else. And so I try to model that in my office because I am the most senior person that looks like me in my office.
It's no longer about figuring out how to create environments that don't harm people. It's literally, we need environments that promote well-being and make people better, because they're already coming in the door with the challenges that we sort of have never faced before.
My mom would always say, and I say all the time, never self-eliminate. Y'all say it with me, say never self-eliminate. So she would say, make them tell you no. Do not tell yourself no, right? Because like any of these spaces that are supposed to be so special, you get up there and you can do it, right? And so, and again, failure, I've been rejected from all sorts of things, right? But we're here, right? And so I get more, you know, you don't get what you don't go for. So the only guarantee is that you will not get what you don't pursue.
I think a lot of folks just constantly think about, I have to say yes to success. And what success is for them is professional success. Successful people also say no. And remember that.
It's a game. If you're going into academia, if you're going into nonprofit, if you're going into government, it's a game. And in order to win the game, you need to know the rules of the game. And I think for those that are coming up, you need to play by the rules of the game such that when you get to that level, you can change the rules of the game.